April 14, 1945. Wiesbaden, Germany. 12th Army Group Headquarters. General Omar Bradley is sitting at his desk signing fuel allocation forms. The coffee beside him has gone cold. He's been doing paperwork for 3 hours. Outside, the war is nearly over. Germany is collapsing. Victory is days away. Then his aide walks in. The young lieutenant is holding a message flimsy. It's marked, "Eyes Only, Patton." Bradley takes it without looking up. He reads it once, then he stops. His pen freezes mid-signature. He reads it again, slowly this time. His face goes from confusion to disbelief. The message is from General George S. Patton, Jr., commander of 3rd Army, the most aggressive, most successful, most controversial general in the European theater. And the message isn't a request, it's an ultimatum. Unless 3rd Army receives immediate permission to advance into Czechoslovakia and liberate Prague, General Patton requests relief from command. He's threatening to resign. And Bradley has 48 hours to respond before Patton makes it official. Bradley looks up at his aide. "Get General Gay on the line, now." But before we go further, if you're here because you love untold World War II history, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button for WW2 Elite. Smash the like button and drop a comment telling me what you think about this story. We're bringing you the battles, the decisions, and the moments that changed history. Now let's get back to April 1945, when 2 of America's top generals were about to clash over the future of Europe. Bradley spreads his situation map across the desk. His aide is still standing there, unsure whether to leave or stay. "Sir, should I—" "Wait," Bradley says. He's tracing lines on the map with his finger. 3rd Army's positions, the Holt Line, the Czech border. And then he sees it. Patton's forward units aren't at the Holt Line. They're not even close. 3rd Army's 12 Corps and V Corps are marked deep inside Bohemia, 90 miles inside Czechoslovakia, 90 miles past where Eisenhower explicitly ordered them to stop. Bradley does the math in his head. 4 days, 90 miles, through mountainous terrain. That's over 22 miles per day. He looks at the Holt Line Eisenhower drew, the Carlsbad-Pilsen-Budweis line. Patton's actual position is 3 days of hard marching beyond it, and according to the map, his lead elements are now just 60 miles from Prague. The Red Army, according to the latest intelligence summaries, is still 120 miles away on the other side of the city. Bradley picks up the secure phones. "Get me 3rd Army operations, now." 30 seconds later, a voice crackles through. It's Brigadier General Gay. This is General Bradley. I'm looking at a map that shows your forward elements 90 miles inside Czechoslovakia. Can you explain that? There's a pause. Then Gay's voice comes back, calm and professional. "Sir, all movements have been within reconnaissance in force parameters. We've been probing enemy positions as per standing orders." Bradley stares at the map. 2 entire corps, thousands of men, artillery, supply lines stretching 90 miles into enemy reconnaissance. Bradley says, "General, you've got 2 entire corps conducting reconnaissance. That's not reconnaissance. That's an invasion." "Sir, Czech civilians have been providing fuel and logistical support. Resistance forces are clearing roads ahead of our advance. Enemy resistance has been minimal. We've simply been following up on, and now General Patton is threatening to resign unless I authorize him to finish what he's already started without authorization," Bradley interrupts. Silence on the other end. "Yes, sir," Gay finally says. Bradley hangs up. He looks at his aide. "Get my car ready. I'm driving to Reims." Because this isn't just about Patton breaking orders. This isn't just about an aggressive general pushing too far too fast. This is about the biggest political prize left in Europe. And everyone from Supreme Headquarters to Moscow knows it. Bradley places another call. This one goes directly to 3rd Army Headquarters in Erlangen. Patton himself picks up on the second ring. He's been expecting this. "George," Bradley says, "I have a message here that says you're requesting relief from command." Patton's voice is steady. No hesitation. "Not requesting, Brad. Offering. You can relieve me, or you can let me take Prague." Bradley closes his eyes. "Here we go. You know I can't authorize that, George. Ike's orders are crystal clear. We halt and let the Russians take Czech. It was already decided at Yalta." "Yalta was politicians talking," Patton replies. "This is war. I've got 2 full corps sitting 60 miles from Prague with nothing but open road ahead. Czech partisans are holding half the city right now. The Russians are 5 days away minimum. And if you roll into Prague," Bradley says, "you'll create an international incident. Roosevelt and Churchill promised Stalin. Roosevelt's dead, Brad. Patton's voice hardens. Truman is president, and Churchill has been screaming for us to beat the Russians to Central Europe for months. I'm just doing what makes military sense. Military sense? Bradley leans back in his chair. George, you're already 90 miles past where you're supposed to be. How exactly did you get to Pilsen when Eisenhower told you to stop? Reconnaissance in force. Perfectly legitimate tactical maneuver. Czech civilians kept telling us the roads were clear, so we kept reconnoitering. Not my fault the enemy kept retreating faster than expected. Bradley lets the silence stretch. Then he speaks carefully. You're putting me in an impossible position. No, Brad. Patton's voice is firm. Politicians put us in an impossible position. I'm giving you a way out. Let me finish this war the right way, or find someone else who will follow orders that make us look like fools in front of history. I need to talk to Ike, Bradley says. Don't move another inch until I call you back. You've got 48 hours, Brad. Patton's tone doesn't change. After that, I'm writing my letter of resignation and releasing it to the press. The American people can decide if they think we should be handing Czechoslovakia to Stalin on a silver platter. The line goes dead. Patton has hung up. Bradley sits there for a long moment, staring at the map. Then he stands, grabs his jacket, and heads for the door. Get my driver, he tells his aide. I'm going to Reims. It's a 3-hour drive to Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force in Reims, France. Bradley spends the entire trip looking at maps and reading intelligence summaries. By the time he arrives, it's 4 in the afternoon, and Eisenhower is in a meeting with Soviet liaison officers. Bradley waits in the hallway. When the Russians finally leave, he walks into Eisenhower's office and closes the door behind him. He doesn't say anything. He just hands Eisenhower the message flimsy. Eisenhower reads it. His face doesn't move. Then he looks up. He's what? His voice isn't loud, but it cuts through the room like a blade. Staff officers in the hallway later report hearing the Supreme Commander raise his voice, something that almost never happens. For the next 10 minutes, Eisenhower paces. Bradley hears words like insubordination and court-martial, and I'll relieve him myself. At one point, Eisenhower slams his hand on the desk hard enough that papers jump, but then, just as suddenly, the shouting stops. For the next 40 minutes, the two men talk behind closed doors. No aides, no secretaries. Just Bradley and Eisenhower, trying to figure out what to do with the most famous general in the United States Army. While Bradley and Eisenhower are debating strategy in Reims, the situation in Prague is spiraling out of control. April 15, 1945. Early morning. Czech resistance forces launch a full-scale uprising against the German occupation. They believe, because Patton's scouts have told them, that American liberation is just hours away. Radio Prague begins broadcasting desperate pleas in English. Americans are coming. Hold the city. Resist the Germans. Help is on the way. Over 30,000 Czech fighters pour into the streets. They seize government buildings. They take bridges. They capture radio stations and railway terminals. For a few hours, it looks like Prague might liberate itself before any army arrives. But then the German SS divisions counterattack. These aren't regular Wehrmacht units. These are fanatics. Hardened troops who know the war is lost and have... They hit the resistance fighters with everything they have. Tanks, artillery, machine guns, flamethrowers. The casualties start mounting. Fast. At 3rd Army headquarters in Erlangen, Patton's operations staff is receiving dozens of messages from Czech scouts embedded with the resistance. Roads clear to Prague. No German resistance on main highways. Civilians lining the street. Come now, another message. Heavy fighting in Prague. Resistance requesting immediate support. American advance urgently needed. Another. SS divisions massacring civilians. Estimates suggest thousands dead. Please send help. Patton reads every message. His staff watches him. They know what he's thinking. They know what he wants to do. One of his corps commanders, Major General Manton Eddy, walks into the office. Sir, Eddy says carefully, we could be in Prague in 48 hours. Maybe less. The men are ready. We've got the fuel. The roads are clear. Patton doesn't look up from the map. I know, he says quietly. Then why? Because Bradley told me not to move. Patton's voice is flat, and Bradley's waiting on Eisenhower. And Eisenhower's waiting on Washington. And Washington is waiting on Moscow. He slams his fist on the table. The maps jump. We're sitting here while Czechs are dying because politicians are more worried about offending Stalin than winning the damn war. But Patton isn't done pushing. Not yet. And neither is someone else. April 15th evening, London. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill is reading the same intelligence reports Bradley and Eisenhower are reading. Reports about Prague, reports about the uprising, reports about Patton's position. Churchill sends an urgent cable, not to Eisenhower, not to Bradley, directly to President Harry Truman and to General George Marshall, the Army Chief of Staff in Washington. The cable is blunt. If we do not liberate Prague, we will hand Stalin the heart of Central Europe. General Patton is positioned to win this objective. Why are we holding him back? The message hits Washington like a bomb. Within hours, it's forwarded to Eisenhower at Chef headquarters. Now, this isn't just about Patton's insubordination. This is about the British Prime Minister publicly questioning American military strategy at the highest political level. Marshall sends his own cable to Eisenhower. What is General Patton's actual position? Can Third Army reach Prague before Soviet forces? Eisenhower's response is careful, diplomatic, political. Third Army could reach Prague within 48 to 72 hours. However, Soviet sensitivities and prior agreements reached at Yalta recommend against such action. In other words, yes, we can do it. No, we won't. Marshall's reply comes back within the hour. Hold current positions. Do not advance beyond Pilsen. Soviet forces have been guaranteed control of Prague per Allied agreement. Eisenhower reads the message, then he picks up the phone and calls Bradley. Tell Patton to stand down, Eisenhower says. That's a direct order. But while Eisenhower and Bradley are trying to figure out how to stop Patton, something happens that no one expected. April 16th, 1945. 0800 hours. A German staff car approaches the forward lines of Third Army's 12th Corps. It's flying a white flag. The American sentries hold their fire and signal for the outstep 3 German officers, high-ranking staff officers. They ask to speak with the Corps commander immediately. Within an hour, they're sitting up, and the message they deliver changes everything. Field Marshal Ferdinand Schörner, commander of German Army Group Center, wants to surrender, not to the Russians, to the Americans, specifically to General Patton's Third Army. The catch: Third Army must advance to Prague immediately to accept the surrender and prevent the Red Army from capturing his forces. The numbers are staggering. Army Group Center has over 900,000 men, nearly 1 million German soldiers willing to lay down their arms, but only if Patton gets to Prague first. The intelligence officer taking the meeting doesn't have the authority to make this decision. He sends an urgent message up the chain of command. Within 2 hours, it reaches Patton's headquarters. Patton reads the message twice. Then he looks at his chief of staff. Get Bradley on the line. When Bradley picks up, Patton doesn't waste time. Brad, the Germans just offered to surrender Army Group Center to us, 900,000 men, but only if we take Prague before the Soviets. There's a long silence. George, I know what you're going to say, Patton interrupts. But think about this. If we don't take that surrender, those 900,000 Germans are going to fight the Russians for another month, maybe longer. That's more casualties. More dead soldiers on all sides. We can end this right now. I'll talk to Ike, Bradley says. You better talk fast, Patton replies, because Czech civilians are dying while we sit here debating. Bradley takes the message to Eisenhower. Eisenhower takes it to Marshall. Marshall takes it to Truman. And the answer comes back the same. No. Do not accept the German surrender. Do not advance to Prague. Hold at Pilsen. Let the Soviet forces handle Army Group Center. Back at Third Army headquarters, Patton's staff is watching him read the reply. His face doesn't change. He just folds the message and puts it in his pocket. Sir, one of his staff officers asks. Patton looks at the map. Prague. 60 miles away. 2 days of marching, maybe less. Prepare movement orders for 12 Corps and V Corps, Patton says quietly. Sir, the orders from Chef. I said prepare the orders. Patton's voice is ice. I'm not sending them yet, but if things change, I want to be. His staff exchanges glances. They know what he's thinking. They know what he's planning. And they know that if Patton decides to move without authorization, it won't just be insubordination. It'll be mutiny. April 17th, 1945. Patton's forward reconnaissance units are now at the outskirts of Prague. Not the main combat elements, just scouts. But they're there, and they're reporting back. Suburbs are clear, minimal German presence. Czech partisans offering guides. Main roads into the city are open. Another report, resistance forces control the city center. They're holding government buildings and asking when American troops will arrive. Another, German forces retreating eastward. SS units still fighting in isolated pockets, but overall resistance is collapsing. Patton sits in his office reading every report. His chief of staff, General Gay, is standing beside him. "Sir," Gay says carefully, "if we move now, we can be in Prague by tomorrow night." Patton doesn't respond. He's staring at a letter he's been writing. The letter of resignation. It's sitting on his desk, half finished. "The men are ready," Gay continues. "The equipment is ready. The Czechs are begging us to come. The Germans want to surrender to us. Everything is in place." Patton picks up the letter. He reads what he's written so far. Then he sets it down and looks at Gay. "Get me Bradley," he says. But before he can make the call, Bradley is already on his way, flying directly to 3rd Army headquarters, because Eisenhower has made his decision, and Bradley has to deliver it in person. April 18th, 1945. Morning. Bradley's plane lands at a forward airstrip near Erlangen. He drives directly to Patton's headquarters. No aides, no staff officers, just Bradley. He walks into Patton's office and closes the door. The two men stand there for a moment, looking at each other. They've known each other for decades, since before the war. They're friends, but right now, Bradley isn't here as a friend. "George," Bradley says, "I need you to pull your forward elements back to the Pilsen line." Patton just stares at him. "Brad, you can't be serious." "It's Ike's direct order," Bradley replies. "The decision came from above him. Truman himself approved Soviet control of Prague. It's out of our hands now." Patton walks to the window. Outside, American soldiers are moving supplies, cleaning equipment, preparing for the next phase of the war. They don't know that the next phase has already been decided for them. "There are Czechs dying right now," Patton says quietly, "who think we're coming to save them. I know. We told them we were coming, Brad. My scouts told them. The resistance fighters believed us. And now you're telling me to just stop? The resistance made assumptions." Patton spins around. "My men made promises because I knew we'd be allowed to finish this. Brad, I've got 900,000 Germans ready to surrender to us, not to the Russians, to us. And Ike's been told to refuse that surrender," Bradley says. "Let the Soviets handle it." Patton walks back to his desk. He picks up the letter of resignation. He holds it up so Bradley can see it. "Then you need to relieve me," Patton says. "Because I can't be part of this, George. I mean it." Patton's voice is shaking now. Not from fear, from anger, from frustration. "This isn't strategy. This isn't military thinking. This is cowardice dressed up as diplomacy." Bradley takes a step forward. His voice is firm but not loud. "You think I like this? You think Ike likes this?"
He pauses. "We're soldiers, George."
"We follow orders, even when they're wrong. Not this order." Patton shakes his head. "I won't give this order." Bradley looks at his friend. The man who drove across France faster than anyone thought possible. The man who terrified the Germans more than any other Allied general. And then Bradley says the words, "George, I'd resign with you if I thought it would change anything." Patton looks, "But it won't," Bradley continues. "So I'm asking you, as your friend, not your superior, stand down, because if you don't, they'll relieve you, and the order will stand anyway. And then this war ends with you in disgrace instead of in glory. Don't let them take that from you." The room is silent. Patton stands there holding the letter. His entire career, everything he's fought for, everything he's accomplished, all of it hanging in the balance. He looks at the map on his wall. Prague, 60 miles away, so close. Then he looks back at Bradley, and slowly he sets the letter down. "All right, Brad," Patton says quietly. "I'll halt." Bradley nods. "But I want it on record," Patton adds, his voice hard, "that I protested this decision in the strongest possible terms." "It already is, George," Bradley says. "It already is." They stand there for another moment. Then Bradley turns and walks out. Patton sits down at his desk. He picks up a pen and opens his diary. And he writes, "I can take Prague. I can save the Czechs. I can bag 900,000 Germans. But I'm ordered to halt and watch the Russians do it instead. If this is victory, what the hell does defeat look like?" 3rd Army halted at the Pilsen line on April 19, 1945. Forward elements pulled back. Reconnaissance teams withdrew. The advance stopped. The Red Army entered Prague on May 9, 11 days later. During those 11 days, German SS forces continued their reprisals against Czech resistance fighters. Estimates vary, but historians believe approximately 5,000 Czech civilians were killed in those final days of fighting. Men, women, and children who had risen up believing American help was on the way. The 900,000 soldiers of German Army Group Center surrendered to Soviet forces instead of American. Many of them spent years in Soviet prison camps. Some never came. Patton never forgave Eisenhower or Marshall for the decision. In private conversations, he called it the worst mistake of the war. In his diary, he wrote that history would judge the decision harshly. He was right. Czechoslovakia fell under Soviet control, not through conquest, not through battle, through a political agreement made thousands of miles away by men who never set foot in Prague. For 44 years, Czechoslovakia remained behind the Iron Curtain, a Soviet satellite state. The freedom that Czech resistance fighters died for in April 1945 didn't come until 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell and communism collapsed. Patton's threat to resign over Prague wasn't about personal glory. It wasn't about ego or fame or adding another victory to his record. It was about a soldier watching political considerations override military reality and moral obligation. He understood what many in Washington didn't: that the decisions being made in the spring of 1945 weren't just about ending World War II. They were about shaping the world that came after. And Bradley's response, that resigning wouldn't change anything, proved tragically correct. The decision had been made at levels far above any general's authority. Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin had already divided Europe at Yalta. Patton and Bradley were just soldiers, and soldiers follow orders, even when those orders are wrong. Years later, after he retired, Bradley wrote in his memoir, "Patton was right about Prague. We should have taken it. The decision to halt was political, not military, and Czechoslovakia paid the price for that decision for half a century." It's one of the few times in his entire memoir that Bradley openly criticized a decision made by his superiors. In 1990, after the fall of communism, the newly liberated Czech Republic erected a series of memorials to the Allied forces who fought to liberate their country. One of those memorials stands in Pilsen, the city where Patton's third. The inscription includes a line from Czech resistance fighters who survived the Prague uprising. "We waited for the Americans who stopped 60 miles away." Patton's Third Army is remembered not for what it accomplished, and it accomplished more than almost any army in history, but for what it was ordered not to do. In April 1945, George Patton stood 60 miles from Prague with 2 full corps, 900,000 German soldiers ready to surrender, and Czech civilians dying in the streets. He was ready to finish the war the way it should have been finished, and he was told to stop. Not because it was militarily impossible, not because it was tactically unsound, but because politicians in Washington and Moscow had already decided how Europe would look after the war ended. Patton threatened to resign because he believed some orders were worth refusing. Bradley convinced him to stand down because he believed some battles couldn't be, and they were both wrong. That's the story of what Bradley said when Patton threatened to resign over Czechoslovakia. A story about 2 generals, 2 friends, caught between duty and conscience, between orders and morality, between what they were told to do and what they knew was right. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching WW2 Elite. This is the kind of history they don't teach in schools: the hard decisions, the impossible choices, the moments when doing the right thing meant disobeying orders. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment telling me what World War II story you want to hear next. There are 1,000 untold stories from this war, and we're bringing them to you one video at a time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.